Okay, imagine this scenario for a second. What if just a regular guy, someone from the inner city, suddenly ends up running for president of the United States?
Right. It sounds completely wild, almost unbelievable.
Exactly. But that's the exact idea Chris Rock explores
Yeah.
in his movie from 2003, Head of State.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this political satire that is, yes, really funny, but it's also surprisingly sharp. It mixes that laugh-out-loud comedy with, well, chaos and some pretty pointed commentary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today, we're going to dive deep into all of it.
It was a big deal for Chris Rock at the time, actually. Head of State, I think it came out March 28, 2003.
Sounds right.
It wasn't just him starring in it. It was his first time directing a feature film.
Oh, right. His directorial debut.
Exactly. And he's got the absolutely brilliant Bernie Mac alongside him.
Oh, man, Bernie Mac.
Plus, really solid support from Dylan Baker and Lynn Whitfield.
Dude, cat.
Definitely. And the genre is squarely political comedy, satire, using humor to critique politics and society.
That's its whole vibe.
And the basic setup is Mays Gilliam, this kind of unknown alderman in Washington, D.C., he gets picked out of nowhere to run for president.
Because the main candidates die in a plane crash, right? Super unlikely event.
Exactly, a tragedy that kicks off this totally unexpected journey. And it really does give you this unique way to look at American politics, the media, race, all of it.
The heart of the movie, what really makes it work, is Chris Rock's humor. It's his signature style,
Totally. Bold, quick.
Yeah, bold, fast-paced, and just really plugged into cultural issues. What I think is so effective is how the laughs aren't just random jokes. They're actually rooted in real social stuff.
Like what specifically?
Well, things like racism, class differences, political hypocrisy just staring you in the face. You see it really clearly in those scenes where Mays gives these just brutally honest speeches, and the crowds are just stunned, like completely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that contrast between the expected political speech and, well, the truth.
Right. It really highlights that hypocrisy. And then, of course, you've got Bernie Mac.
Oh, Bernie Mac's character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the running mate, just aggressively slapping people around like it's some kind of new policy initiative.
Hilarious, but also kind of making a point about strong-arm tactics, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And the film does a great job poking fun at political ads, too, and how the media can twist things.
Right, that whole manipulation game.
Yeah. And even though it feels really exaggerated sometimes, there's this kernel of truth, about how candidates get molded by handlers and donors and polls.
It reflects something real, even in the absurdity.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It's not just jokes. It's using those jokes to make some serious points.
That's spot on. It definitely goes deeper than just surface-level spoofing. What's fascinating, like you said, is how it uses comedy to make you think about some, well, pretty big questions.
Yeah.
Head of State gets into some really crucial topics, like racial representation in politics here in the U.S. And it doesn't just touch on tokenism. It kind of exposes it as a strategy. The party machine sees May's identity as something to be, like, used or marketed.
Right, not just accepted, but exploited almost.
Exactly. It shows that sort of transactional side of diversity in politics sometimes, and it really highlights that gap between politicians and the communities they're supposed to represent.
Which feels very relevant still.
Absolutely. And it's got that sharp critique of how much the media shapes how voters see things. But the core question, the one Chris Rock poses through Mays, is basically, what if a candidate just told the truth?
Yeah. That's the kicker.
That's the idea that really carries the film, emotionally and intellectually. It makes you think about that whole authenticity thing. Like, being real might make you connect with people, but then the system immediately tries to package and sell that very realness.
That's a pretty cynical take, but maybe not wrong. Does the film offer any kind of hope against that, or is it mostly just pointing out the flaws?
That's a good question. It leans heavily into the critique, for sure.
Okay, so beyond the commentary, which is obviously pretty sharp, let's talk about the performances, because they really drive this thing.
Oh, definitely.
Chris Rock himself, he's just got so much energy. He's charismatic. And honestly, he drops some of the best political one-liners from that whole early 2000s comedy era.
He really does.
But you know who just owns every single scene he's in?
That'd be Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac. Oh, my God. His portrayal is just intense, hilarious, totally unpredictable, unforgettable.
Absolutely. He steals every scene, that raw, kind of dangerous energy he had.
Yeah. It's like his stand-up persona amplified. How important was his specific energy to balance rock style, you think?
I think it was crucial. Bernie Mac brought that raw, almost volcanic energy that was such a great counterpoint to Rock's more observational, rapid-fire delivery.
Yeah, different rhythms.
Totally. It's a duo you don't see often, and it gives the film this really unique comedic feel. And yeah, the supporting cast is good. They add flavor, but let's be real.
It's rock show.
It's Rock's show, absolutely, both in front of the camera and behind it. And as a first-time director, he does a pretty decent job. He balances the big laughs with the message he's trying to send.
It's not subtle, though.
No, definitely not subtle. It doesn't try to be.
Yeah.
The film just leans into its loud, direct tone, which honestly I think is part of its appeal for many.
Okay, so keeping that in mind, the strengths, the directness, it feels like a good time to kind of weigh the pros and cons, give it a balanced look.
Sure, makes sense. So on the plus side, definitely smart satire, still relevant in many ways.
Right.
You've got those really strong performances, especially Rock and, of course, Bernie Mac.
Can't say that enough.
Bold commentary on race and politics. And it is funny. It moves quickly.
Okay, so the cons.
Well, on the flip side, sometimes it can feel a little too preachy. Or maybe chaotic, which, satire can sometimes risk.
Getting heavy-handed.
Yeah, potentially. And the plot, especially maybe the second half, it gets a little thin. It relies more on individual jokes or scenes than, strong narrative drive.
Right, the story itself kind of takes a backseat sometimes.
And, it's been 2 decades. Some of the jokes haven't aged perfectly. That's pretty common with comical humor, though.
That's true. You mentioned it feeling preachy sometimes. Do you think that directness, even if it feels a bit much occasionally, is kind of necessary for this type of satire to land its punch? Or does it just turn some people off?
That's the tightrope, isn't it? I think for Chris Rock's style, especially back then, that directness was part of the package. He wasn't aiming for subtle digs.
No, definitely not.
And for some viewers, that bluntness is exactly what makes it work. It grabs you. For others, yeah, it might feel like being lectured a bit.
Right.
But, if you're trying to highlight big systemic problems, sometimes you reach for the sledgehammer and not the scalpel.
Fair point. Which leads to a bigger question, I guess.
Mm.
How well does a movie like this, from 20 years ago, flaws and all, still speak to our political world today?
That's the key question, really.
So, for you listening, our final take on Head of State is basically this. It's way more than just some goofy comedy flick.
Mm.
It really is a political statement, just wrapped up skillfully in jokes. Chris Rock uses that satire really effectively to voice some real frustrations people have with the system.
Yeah, it taps into something.
And yeah, it has its flaws, maybe a bit preachy here and there, the plot could be stronger, but it's still bold, it's still funny, and honestly, it makes you think.
Definitely thought-provoking.
So if you like political comedy, or if you're just a fan of Chris Rock's stand-up kind of vibe, it is definitely worth a watch. We'll land on maybe a solid 7.5 out of 10.
It sounds about right. And thinking beyond just the film, given it came out back in 2003, what does Head of State maybe teach you, the listener, about those ongoing challenges? Honesty versus authenticity in politics, especially with how media and public perception just keep changing.
Yeah, that's a great question to leave folks with. Think about how much the political scene has shifted since Mays Gilliam ran for president in this movie, and maybe how much it hasn't. Does his story, his whole experience, still ring true with how we look at our leaders in the media machine today? Something to definitely chew on.